Elias Ward had always believed that humans were good at adapting to strange situations. But nothing in his life had prepared him for the moment his ship slammed into the surface of Varelia. The ISS Venture had been on a simple diplomatic mission, a journey meant to strengthen peaceful ties with the Varelian high clans. Instead, an unexpected meteor storm shredded the ship's shields and forced an emergency landing on a world he had only seen on screens. When Elias opened his eyes after the crash, he found himself lying among broken consoles and dim emergency lights. Around him, sparks rained from ruptured cables, and the ship groaned like a wounded animal. The air smelled of scorched metal, and the familiar hum of the engines was gone. His head throbbed, but he pushed himself up and checked the status of his crewmates. Most were alive. Some were hurt. All were shaken. It was hours later when the Varelians arrived. Their landing craft touched down near the wreck, and from it stepped Commander Sarilith, a figure who immediately demanded attention. She towered over Elias by almost a head, her silver-blue armor reflecting the firelight from the damaged ship. Her skin had a faint, shimmering pattern that looked like starlight moving gently under the surface. Her eyes were sharp, golden, and seemed to see everything. Humans knew little about Varelian customs, but even Elias sensed the respect her soldiers showed her. She moved with controlled confidence, every gesture precise. When she reached him and extended a hand to help him up from the debris, he hesitated only a moment before taking it. "Engineer Ward," she said in a calm, steady voice. "You are unharmed?" Mostly," Elias replied, brushing dust off his uniform. "Just a few bruises and a headache the size of Jupiter." She blinked once, clearly trying to interpret his humor. "Your ship took significant damage. It is fortunate that there were no casualties." Elias nodded. "We were lucky. And thank you for the rescue." "Really?" Sarilith gave a small, almost invisible nod. "You are our guests. It is our duty to ensure your safety until your people arrive." Over the next few days, as the human crew recovered, Elias found himself working closely with Sarilith. She oversaw the repair teams personally, coordinating both Varelian engineers and the surviving members of the Venture. She seemed fascinated by human technology, asking questions in her calm, serious tone. Elias found her curiosity refreshing, though sometimes intimidating. Varelians were known for their discipline, and Sarilith embodied this completely. He noticed, however, that she listened intently whenever he spoke, even when he joked. She seemed to try to understand human humor, even when it made little sense to her. The way she tilted her head slightly or narrowed her eyes as she processed his words was oddly endearing. Elias was not the type to be easily flustered, but something about her presence made him feel unusually careful. One warm evening, after the repair work had slowed and the sky had begun to glow with Varelia's twin moons, Elias sat near the makeshift camp, inspecting a replacement part. Sarilith approached him as quietly as a shadow. "Engineer Ward," she said. "I could say the same about you," he replied with a half-smile. She considered the statement. "I do not require much rest. It is common among my people." "Wish humans had that feature," Elias said. "Would make repairs so much faster." She observed him for a moment, then sat down beside him, her armor clinking softly. They watched the moons rise, their light washing over the camp. For once, there was no stress, no emergency alarms, no orders, no pressure. Just quiet. Elias sighed, stretching his tired arms. "You know," he said jokingly, "for someone so serious all the time, you'd make an adorable wife." He expected her to laugh awkwardly, or maybe glare, or tell him that Varelian commanders did not entertain jokes like that. Instead, Sarilith froze. Her body went perfectly still, her eyes widening just a fraction. Elias felt a sudden wave of regret. Had he offended her? Had the joke not translated well? He opened his mouth to explain, but before he could, she leaned slightly closer. "I accept," she whispered. The words were so soft, so unexpected, that Elias blinked at her in confusion. Accept what?" "The proposal," she said simply, as if it were obvious. Elias nearly dropped the tool in his hand. Wait, no, that wasn't Serelith. I was joking, but she did not seem offended. Instead, she looked at him with quiet seriousness. Among my people, the phrase you spoke is a formal declaration, she explained. When delivered with sincerity, it indicates intention to form a life bond. Elias felt his face go pale. Sincerity? I was kidding. She looked genuinely puzzled. You said I would make an adorable wife. Humans sometimes use symbolic speech in courtship, yes? Not like that. Elias rubbed his face. It was a joke. A human joke. A casual comment, nothing formal. Serelith processed this slowly. Then, your intention is not to proceed with the bond? Of course not, Elias blurted out, then winced. I mean, not that you'd be a bad look. That's not what I meant. I'm just human. And humans joke about things. A silence followed, a long one. Serelith finally stood, her expression unreadable. I understand, she said. However, half the Varelian Council heard your statement. And my acceptance. Elias felt something heavy drop in his stomach. They heard it? Yes, she replied. And they will take it as a diplomatic commitment between our peoples. Elias stared blankly at the ground. Oh no. This misunderstanding, Serelith continued, may complicate matters. Attempts to retract a public proposal, especially one accepted by a commander of my rank, could cause offense. It could be interpreted as an insult. Elias groaned. I'm going to start an interstellar incident because I tried to be funny. She tilted her head again. Do humans frequently joke at the cost of political stability? Only the talented ones, Elias muttered. To his surprise, the corners of her lips tugged very slightly upward. The closest thing he had seen to a Varelian smile. I will speak to the council, she said, but it may not be simple. That night, Elias barely slept. He lay awake, staring at the inside of the tent the Varelians had provided. Imagining headlines back home. Human engineer accidentally marries alien commander. Treaty in jeopardy. It would be humiliating. Worse, it would be his fault. He needed to fix it. But how do you undo a proposal in a culture where every word matters? The next morning, the Varelian Council summoned Elias. The chamber was a tall, elegant room built from smooth, pale stone. Sunlight filtered through crystal panels, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. High-ranking Varelians lined the room, their expressions calm but observant. Serelith stood among them, straight and composed. Elias walked in nervously, trying not to trip over his own feet. The head counselor addressed him. Engineer Ward, she said, it has come to our attention that you made a bonding declaration to Commander Serelith, which she accepted. This is a significant step between our peoples. Elias swallowed hard. Every eye was on him, even Serelith. He opened his mouth to explain, but Serelith stepped forward. Counselors, she said. Allow me to clarify. The human used a symbolic expression common in his culture. It appears we have misinterpreted it. A ripple of murmurs passed through the room. The counselor looked back at Elias. Is this true? Was your statement not an intentional proposal? Elias felt the weight of every possible wrong answer. He glanced at Serelith. She watched him with a controlled expression. But there was something in her eyes, something that told him this mattered more than she let on. He took a breath. Yes, he said carefully. It was not meant as a formal proposal. Humans sometimes speak lightly, even when we don't mean big things. I didn't know it would be taken seriously. The murmurs grew louder. The head counselor frowned. This creates a dilemma. Retracting a proposal after acceptance, even in error, is a grave insult in our culture. It suggests that the Varelian partner is unworthy. Elias felt his chest tighten. I don't think Serelith is unworthy, he said quickly. She's incredible, strong, smart. I respect her. I just didn't know the meaning behind the words. The council considered this. Serelith remained silent. After a long discussion, the counselor finally said, We will deliberate further. You may leave. Elias walked out with a heavy heart. He knew this wasn't over. He had to find a way to fix the situation, not for politics, but because he genuinely respected Sarilith and hated the idea of embarrassing her. As he stepped into the sunlight outside the chamber, Sarilith approached him quietly. You handled that with honesty, she said. Many would not. Elias sighed. I just don't want to make things worse. You may have already done so, she said. Then, softer. But perhaps not beyond repair. They stood there for a moment, neither speaking. The misunderstanding had changed something between them. Something neither fully understood yet. Whatever happened next, Elias knew one thing. This was only the beginning. Elias woke early the next morning. Though he had barely slept, his mind kept replaying the scene in the council chamber. Sarilith's calm face, and the council's stern expressions. He kept thinking of how easily a small joke could turn into a diplomatic disaster. Humans always joked that they could say something stupid and start a war. But Elias never imagined he would be the living example. He stepped outside the shelter the Varelians had given him. The sunlight on Varelia was softer than Earth's, tinted with a faint lavender glow from the planet's atmosphere. Varelian structures rose around him, elegant and curved, with no sharp corners. Everything looked peaceful, almost gentle, which made him feel even worse for causing complications. As he walked toward the repair site, he found the human crew talking quietly among themselves. They stopped when they saw him. Some gave sympathetic looks, others looked amused, though they tried to hide it. One of his fellow engineers muttered, Only you, Elias. Only you could get engaged by accident on an alien planet. Elias sighed. Trust me, I'd undo it if I could. Maybe don't undo it, another whispered. She's impressive, and she saved us. Elias shook his head. It's not about that. I embarrassed her. And I embarrassed us. Before the conversation could go further, Sarilith approached, walking with her steady, graceful posture. Her armor reflected the morning light, and the soldiers around her stepped aside respectfully. Elias tried to hide his nervousness, but she saw it immediately. The council requests your presence again soon, she said. Until then, they ask that you remain close to the camp. Right, Elias replied. Makes sense. She watched him for a moment. You look troubled. Well, he said awkwardly. It's not every day you accidentally propose marriage to a respected commander from another species and then have her accept in front of political leaders. Sarilith blinked once, her version of a sigh. Humans often speak with unnecessary complications, and Varelians take every word literally. Not every word, she corrected gently. Only the meaningful ones. Elias rubbed his neck. Yeah, well, I guess I need to learn which ones are meaningful here. Sarilith didn't answer. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the sky, where distant ships moved slowly through the atmosphere, like gliding birds. Your people will send a diplomatic representative soon, she said. Before they arrive, the council must decide how to interpret your words. Both our species depend on their decision. Elias felt the pressure settle on him again. I really messed this up, didn't I? Perhaps, she said honestly. But you did not intend harm. Intent matters. Does it matter to your council? Elias asked quietly. She paused. Not always. But it matters to me. Before Elias could say anything, a Varelian soldier rushed over. Commander, there is trouble at the southern ridge. Sarilith straightened immediately. What kind of trouble? Sabotage, the soldier said. Explosives planted near the human crash site. Elias jolted. What? Why? Sarilith's eyes sharpened. There are factions who fear an alliance between our species. They may believe that destroying your ship or harming your crew could end the diplomatic progress. So someone's trying to frame us? Elias asked. Possibly. Or someone wants you gone before the council decides on the proposal issue. That's comforting, Elias muttered. Sarilith immediately ordered her troops to secure the area. She turned to Elias. Stay behind me. You don't have to protect me, he said. though it came out weaker than he intended. She looked at him with a steady, almost firm expression. Your safety is my responsibility, especially now. She didn't say the reason out loud, but Elias understood. Because of the misunderstanding. Because of the bond. Even if it meant nothing to him culturally. To her people. It was serious. They walked together toward the southern ridge, where the land dipped into a valley filled with glowing plants. Elias spotted strange metal shards, definitely not Varelian, and a device half buried under a rock. It looked like a bomb, compact and deadly. Serelith knelt beside it. This design is not Varelian, she said, nor is it human. So who planted it? Elias asked. There are many who do not wish to see our species united. She replied softly. Fear drives some. Power drives others. Do you think this was meant for the council? Elias asked. No, Serelith said. This was meant for you. Elias stared at her. Me? Why? She stood slowly. If you were harmed, the council would blame the mistake on diplomatic instability. They would argue that humans are too dangerous, too unpredictable. The alliance would fail. So someone thinks the best way to stop the alliance is to kill the human who made the joke? Elias asked, his voice shaking slightly. Yes, she said. Well, Elias muttered, that makes the joke even worse. Serelith didn't smile, but her expression softened slightly. She signaled her soldiers to deactivate the device and sweep the area for more threats. When they returned to camp, Elias felt strangely quiet. The danger had shaken him more deeply than he expected. He had always thought diplomacy was about talking, negotiating, and avoiding conflict. He never imagined it could involve actual attempts on his life. Serelith walked beside him silently. When they reached the shade near the main tent, she asked, Are you harmed? No, he said softly. But, thank you. For stepping up. For watching out for me. It is what I must do, she replied, but also what I choose to do. Elias looked up at her. Why? She hesitated, then answered slowly, as if choosing each word carefully. Because your life matters. To your people. To this negotiation. And what? She looked away. I find your presence interesting. Elias felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. He didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. Their moment was broken by the arrival of another soldier. Commander Serelith, the council is ready. They require both you and the human. Elias swallowed hard. Here we go again. The council chamber was brighter this time, filled with more representatives. Human envoys had arrived as well. 2 diplomats and a security officer. They stood near the entrance. Looking tense, the head counselor raised her hand. We have investigated the matter. We now understand the phrase used by Engineer Ward was not intended as a marriage proposal. Elias exhaled deeply. However, the counselor continued. His words were spoken publicly and accepted by Commander Serelith. Many Varelians believe the bond is already formed. One of the human diplomats stepped forward. With respect, we cannot allow a diplomatic misunderstanding to bind one of our citizens to a foreign custom. The counselor held up her hand. A retraction would insult our commander and damage relations more severely than any lost ship or failed mission. The diplomat frowned. Are you saying he must go through with it? We are saying, the counselor said slowly, that the bond is not fully formed unless both parties confirm it willingly. Elias felt his heart pound. So it wasn't forced. Not yet. They had a choice. The council continued. We require a demonstration of intent. A trial, as tradition dictates. It will test their cooperation, trust, and unity. If they pass, the bond is valid. If they fail, the misunderstanding is forgiven, and the proposal dissolved without offense. Elias blinked. A trial? Of what kind? Of what kind? Serelith spoke softly. A series of tasks. They are designed to show if 2 individuals can work together and support each other. It is ancient tradition. The human diplomat whispered harshly. You don't have to do this, Elias. Say no, and we'll negotiate an alternative. But Elias looked at Sarilith. She stood calm, but he saw something in her eyes, a quiet expectation, a small hope she didn't say out loud. He remembered her protecting him, guiding him, standing by him even when he had embarrassed her. He respected her. More than he expected, he turned to the council. I'll do the trial. The diplomatic team stared at him in shock. The council nodded approvingly. Then the trial begins at dawn. Sarilith stepped closer. Are you certain? Elias gave a tense smile. Well, if I'm going to fix the mess I made, I have to try. Right? She looked at him with a warm, almost gentle expression. We will face it together. As they left the chamber, Elias felt nervous but strangely hopeful. Whatever tomorrow brought, he wouldn't face it alone. Elias woke before dawn. Long before the Varelian suns began to color the sky, his stomach twisted with nerves, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. Today was the day the trial began, a set of ancient Varelian tests meant to judge trust, cooperation, and unity between two people. If he and Sarilith failed, the misunderstanding would be forgiven peacefully. If they passed, the bond would be seen as real. A marriage, in Varelian culture. He sat up and rubbed his face, still not fully believing he had reached this point. A joke had led him here. But now the situation felt bigger than jokes. Bigger than him. The alliance between their species depended on this. He stepped outside the shelter. The early air was cool, and a faint golden mist hovered over the ground. Varelian soldiers were already moving quietly, preparing the area for the first trial. He saw Sarilith standing near the ridge, staring at the horizon. Even at rest, she had a powerful presence. Her armor glimmered like polished stone, and her stillness made her seem carved out of the morning light. Elias approached. Morning. She turned slightly. You slept? A little, he admitted. Mostly I tried to imagine what we're about to do. You should be calm, she said. The trials are designed to reveal truth, not perfection. That sounds comforting, Elias said with a nervous laugh. Sarilith watched him for a moment. You fear failure? I fear letting you down, he said honestly. She blinked, surprised. Why me? Well, Elias said, shifting awkwardly. Because you've taken this seriously from the start. You've stood up for me. You've protected me, and I don't want you to think I'm someone who runs away when things get hard. Sarilith lowered her gaze for a moment. When she looked back up, there was something warmer in her golden eyes. Then we will not fail, she said simply. Soldiers approached, signaling the beginning of the first trial. The council members were already gathering near a raised platform. Along with human diplomats who watched anxiously, a counselor stepped forward. The first trial, she announced, is a test of shared intuition and cooperation. You must guide each other through the path of echoes. Elias looked at Sarilith. What's the path of echoes? Quote, a maze, she said, but not a simple one. Indeed, as they approached, Elias saw towering stone walls twisting in every direction. Strange crystals were embedded in the walls, glowing faintly. The air inside the maze felt heavier, like it carried a soft vibration. Sarilith explained. The crystals generate illusions, sounds, images, even false paths. One alone cannot navigate it, but two together, if they trust each other, can. Great, Elias muttered. A magical maze. Totally normal day for an engineer. Sarilith gave him a rare, tiny smile. Stay close. Speak when you are unsure. They stepped inside. Immediately, the light dimmed and the crystals hummed softly. The walls seemed to shift, moving in the corners of Elias's vision. He reached out, touching the stone. It felt real enough. They walked forward, turning at bends, moving deeper. Then Elias heard something. A faint voice calling his name. He froze. Sarilith, he whispered. Did you hear that? No, she said. It sounded like someone from my crew, like they're hurt. It is an illusion, she said firmly. Do not trust it. Elias took a shaky breath. Right. But as they moved forward, he heard it again. Louder this time. A cry for help. He bit his lip and kept his eyes on Sarilith. She walked with steady confidence, blocking out everything around her. At the next junction, the walls flickered and shifted. The path ahead suddenly split into two. On one path, Elias saw the familiar shape of a human figure lying on the ground. On the other path, he saw nothing but empty stone. His heart pounded. Sarilith. I see someone. She looked at him. Describe it. Human. Maybe from my ship. Is the figure speaking? No. Then it is not real. The illusions create what you fear most. Elias shut his eyes tightly for a moment, then nodded. Okay. I trust you. They moved down the empty path. As they turned another corner, the crystal lights flared, and the walls seemed to melt away, revealing a wide canyon with a storm raging below. Wind whipped their faces, and thunder cracked overhead. Elias stumbled back, but Sarilith didn't even flinch. Elias, she said calmly, gripping his arm. The ground beneath your feet is still solid. Do not look at the storm. Look at me. He did. The canyon vanished. Only the maze remained. That is how we continue, she said. Together. Elias took a slow breath. You're really good at this. I was trained for these trials, she said. You were not. But you learn quickly. They pressed deeper into the maze. Now Elias began noticing things too. Patterns in the wall crystals. Faint differences in footsteps. The sound of real movement versus illusionary echoes. More than once, he stopped Sarilith from taking a false turn. After nearly an hour, they reached a final chamber, where a large, glowing symbol shimmered on the floor. As they stepped onto it, the hum of the maze faded, and the walls grew still. Sarilith nodded. We have passed. Elias exhaled loudly. I'm never doing that again. When they stepped outside, the council and diplomats watched with intense interest. The counselor spoke. You succeeded in navigating the path of echoes. Few pairs do so on their first attempt. The human diplomat whispered to Elias. Nice work. But what comes next? Elias didn't dare ask. The counselor continued. You will rest briefly. The second trial will begin at midday. Back at camp, Elias drank water like he had crossed a desert. Sarilith sat across from him, removing part of her armor to inspect a small crack in the plating. You okay? He asked. It is minor, she said. Your instincts were good in the maze. Well, Elias said shyly. I couldn't have made it without you. You could have, she replied calmly. But you did not need to. They sat in silence for a moment, the air warm around them. Then Elias asked quietly, Sarilith, do you want this bond? If we pass all the trials? She paused for a long time before answering. Humans and Varelians are different. Very different. Our lives, our thoughts, our traditions. Yet, I do not find the idea unpleasant. His heart skipped. Really? She looked at him, her expression serious but gentle. You are honest. Brave in your own way. You show respect even when you are afraid. These qualities matter to my people. And they matter to me. Elias felt a warmth in his chest. I appreciate that. More than you know. Before anything else could be said, a horn sounded from the ridge, signaling that the second trial was ready. Sarilith stood. We go. The second trial took place in an open field with tall, white grass moving like waves. In the center of the field stood a large mechanical structure with rotating platforms and shifting panels. The counselor explained. The second trial tests unity in danger. As you move through the shifting platforms, you must protect each other. If either falls, the trial ends. Adderway. And I. Thank you for watching. The 16, 17U, and I way. Elias stared. Falls where? To the ground, the counselor said simply. From high above. Elias felt his stomach flip. The platforms rose quickly into the air, forming a towering, constantly changing structure. Sarilith said softly, I will lead. Follow me closely. The platforms were tricky, some rotated slowly, others quickly, some tilted without warning. Elias nearly fell more than once. But Sarilith always caught his arm, steadying him with surprising gentleness for someone so strong. Halfway up, one platform jerked violently. Elias slipped. His foot slid off the edge. He felt his body tilt backward into empty air. Sarilith grabbed him instantly, pulling him close. For a moment he was pressed against her armor, heart racing wildly. She held him firmly. You are safe, she said quietly. He nodded shakily. Thanks. Again, they continued their climb, moving in sync now. Elias warned Sarilith of platforms that seemed unstable, and she guided him around dangerous sections. Near the top, the wind grew stronger, and the structure swayed slightly. Elias gritted his teeth, focusing on Sarilith's movements. Finally, they reached the final platform. When they both stepped on it, the structure stopped shifting, and the wind quieted. A soft light glowed under their feet. They had passed the second trial. Back on the ground, the council looked impressed. The human diplomats looked relieved. Elias felt exhausted, but also proud. Sarilith stood beside him, her armor dusty, a faint line of sweat on her brow. You did well, she said. You saved me like 5 times, Elias replied. 5.5, she corrected calmly. Elias laughed, surprised by her humor. As the sun began to set, the council announced that the final trial would take place the next day, the most important of all. A trial of choice, trust, and declaration. Elias returned to his shelter that evening with his heart full of questions. Would they pass? What did he truly want? What did Sarilith want? As he lay down, he knew one thing was certain. Tomorrow would decide everything. Elias barely slept that night, even though he was exhausted from the trials. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the Varelian shelter, listening to the soft hum of distant wildlife and the faint whisper of night wind. The final trial would happen at sunrise. Sarilith had said it would be a test of choice, but she never explained what that meant. The council kept their traditions secret until the moment of each test. He turned onto his side, trying to calm the mix of fear, curiosity, and something else he didn't want to name yet. The last few days had changed him, changed how he saw Sarilith, how he saw himself, and how he saw their 2 species. A joke had started all this, but what it led to was no joke at all. As the first soft rays of morning filtered through the tent fabric, Elias finally sat up. His heart beat steadily, almost too loudly. It was time. When he stepped outside, Sarilith was already waiting. She stood tall, armor polished, her posture perfect even after yesterday's dangerous climb. The light of dawn painted a warm glow across her features, softening her usually sharp expression. When she saw him, her gaze shifted just enough to show she had been waiting for him. You are prepared? She asked. No, Elias admitted honestly, but I'm here. That is enough. They walked together toward the ceremonial grounds, a large circular area made of smooth white stone. The council was gathered, standing around the perimeter. Human diplomats were there too, looking tense but hopeful. A crowd of Varelian onlookers had gathered farther back, whispering with curiosity. Elias felt 1,000 eyes studying him. The head counselor stepped forward. You have passed the trial of echoes. You have passed the trial of ascent. Now comes the final trial, the trial of bond. Elias swallowed hard. The counselor continued. The final trial is simple. There is no maze, no platform, no danger. It is a trial of truth. Each of you must choose. Do you accept or reject the bond? Elias blinked. That was it? No puzzle? No death-defying challenge? But the counselor wasn't finished. You will choose separately, she said. You will not know the other's choice until both have spoken. If one chooses yes and the other no, the bond cannot be formed, and the misunderstanding will be forgiven. But the council will judge the mismatch as a sign of instability between your species. Elias felt the air shift. So a rejection, even an honest one, could damage diplomacy. If both choose no, the counselor said, you part ways peacefully. Relations will continue, but weakened. And if both choose yes, Elias asked quietly, then the bond becomes official. You will be united by Varelian tradition. Elias felt his heartbeat thump harder. United, married, bound. The counselor continued. Your choice must be spoken with full honesty. If you lie, the bond will fail, and consequences will follow. Elias took a deep breath. Serelith stood tall beside him. Her face was calm, but he could see something behind her eyes, hope, maybe, or fear, or a mix of both. The council arranged them so they stood back to back, unable to see one another. Elias felt Serelith's presence behind him like a solid wall of steady strength. He didn't know what she would choose. He didn't know what he himself should choose. He closed his eyes and thought about everything that had happened. The crash. Their first conversation. The quiet evening. When he joked and she misunderstood. The way she accepted calmly, without hesitation. The maze. Where she guided him with patience. The platforms. Where she caught him every time he slipped. The way she told him he was interesting, and honest, and brave. And the way it felt when she stood beside him. It had begun to feel right, in a strange way. But was that enough? He didn't know. The weight of the entire alliance pressed down on his shoulders, making it hard to think. The counselor raised her voice. We will hear the choices now. Commander Serelith will speak first. Elias's breath caught. Serelith's voice came clearly. I choose. There was a long silence, long enough to make Elias's heart twist. Yes, she said. Elias felt the word like a warm shock through his entire body. Serelith had chosen him. Chosen this. Seriously. Honestly, she didn't know what he would say. She didn't know if he wanted the same thing. But still, she chose yes. Elias stared at the ground. His mind raced. He could say no. The council had said a mutual rejection would end things peacefully, with no offense. He could leave with dignity. He could go back home, tell everyone about the misunderstanding, and laugh about it someday. But could he? He remembered Serelith's steady hands pulling him up, her soft admission that she found him interesting, her gentle voice when she said his life mattered, her quiet smile, rare but precious. He remembered how he felt when she chose him just now, not because of pressure, but because she wanted to. And now the counselor said, Engineer Elias Ward, your choice. Elias took a deep breath. His voice shook a little at first, but he steadied it. I choose. He paused. And in that pause, he realized something simple and clear. He didn't want to walk away. Yes, he said. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. The counselors exchanged satisfied looks. The human diplomats stared in shock. Serelith exhaled softly behind him, and though he couldn't see her face, he felt the warmth of her relief. The counselor raised her hands. The bond is formed. The crowd began to hum with approving sounds. A low, harmonious note carried through the open air, a Varelian sign of welcome. Elias and Serelith turned to face each other. She stepped closer, her gaze soft but intense. Elias, she said quietly, you chose freely? I did, he answered. I mean, this all started with a joke. But the choice wasn't a joke. Not this time. She held out her hand in a Varelian gesture of union. Elias hesitated only a moment before placing his hand in hers. Her fingers wrapped around his, gently but firmly. Her touch steady and warm. The council signaled the end of the trial. Soldiers struck the ground with ceremonial staffs, and the air filled with a ringing tone like chimes. Human diplomats approached quickly, speaking in excited whispers about treaties and alliances. But Elias barely heard them. Serelith was still holding his hand. When he looked up at her, she looked back with a small, honest smile, the first real smile he had seen from her. Later, after the ceremony ended and the diplomatic celebration began, Elias and Seralith stepped away from the noise and walked toward a quiet area overlooking the shimmering purple horizon. Elias sat on a smooth stone bench. Seralith stood beside him, watching the sky. After a moment, she spoke. "When I accepted your words the first time, I did so because I believed it would bring peace between our peoples," she said. "I did not expect anything more." "And now?" Elias asked. She turned to him slowly. "Now, I am glad you spoke those words, even if you did not mean them at first." Elias laughed softly. "You know, back home, people always say that humans are unpredictable. I guess I just proved them right." Seralith tilted her head, studying him. "I do not mind unpredictability," she said. "It is intriguing." Elias felt warmth spread in his chest. "Well, since the bond is official now, I should at least say the words properly." She listened closely. He gave a small smile. "You'd make an adorable wife." This time, Seralith laughed softly, a gentle sound, warm and rare. "And I accept," she whispered. Their species had been unsure of each other. Their worlds had nearly broken apart. A misunderstanding had started it all. But now, the bond formed not from confusion, but from choice. Elias looked out at the horizon, Seralith standing close beside him. For the first time since the crash, he felt steady, hopeful, connected. Whatever challenges waited ahead, political tensions, cultural differences, new dangers, they would face them together. And in that simple truth, the entire galaxy changed.